Toby, thank you for joining.
My pleasure.
Do you mind if I call you Toby or Tobes?
You can call
Toby
me
Mice
whatever
J.
you want, you know.
ZKDid.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah? Cool. So, Toby, thank you so much for coming today. First things first, what got you into Cardano?
What got me into Cardano was my displeasure with what I was seeing in the blockchain industry. I was kind of more focused in the Ethereum ecosystem and been working on a project, and I saw quite a lot of mudslinging towards the Cardano ecosystem, and that actually made me want to come and support a bit more and pay a bit more attention, because I actually thought the peer-reviewed process was something that made sense to me, and I thought people that were, you know, bashing a peer-reviewed process was sort of obviously anti-science and anti-pushing the tech forward. So that kind of brought me to the community, and basically thanks to Bankless, I met the Cardano crew, and
I don't know.
They did me a favour. They certainly did.
So, yeah, obviously, I've not known you too long. Obviously, went out for a meal last night. Few exchanges on DMs in the past, but obviously you've been around longer than I have, definitely, within Cardano. How do you find your experience with like the community on social media for Cardano as opposed to Ethereum?
It's totally different. I think the two ecosystems are really looking for something quite different. I mean, there is a lot of talk in Cardano that they want it to be a financial layer. They say a similar thing to in Ethereum, but in honesty, I see a much wider ecosystem, a broader spectrum of purpose, because obviously a decentralized treasury and a decentralized governance seems to be pushing it into more of a public arena than a private corporate sort of thing, which is what I feel Ethereum is more based around, the banking system, and more of a corporate thing. And I would say I'm a decentralization maxi, and so for me it's all about the people and pushing out to the public, and that's what I like about Cardano. It's just got a really great community of people, and people that seem to be on the same wavelength, seem to be sharing the same values, so they want good for the world, and that's why I feel really comfortable around the Cardano community, because they really do care about each other, and that's something that stuck out to me really, you know.
I think there's definitely a lot of passionate people here. We seem to be an older, on average, community, not necessarily more mature, but older.
I just find the community so engaging. And that is really important, you know, it's when you want to talk about ideas, and you know, at the end of the day, we are on the cutting edge of science here. You know, we're talking about technologies that aren't really mature. So the community and the devs are trying to push a mindset forward, and we are learning as we're going. And so, I think that's great that the Cardano community engaged so much, because they're just so passionate. And for me, I love it.
So I want to explore your Twitter handle on X, I suppose. The X handle is .ZKDid. Can you explain what that means? Yeah,
well, basically, my project is based on decentralized DNS. And decentralized DNS, difficult to explain briefly, but obviously we're talking about ZKDid, or .ZKDid is a top-level domain, so similar to a .com. A decentralized version of that is one that you can own, and it's censorship resistant. So if I give you an example, if I bought david.com, that is part of the ICANN root zone, which is not censorship resistant, and it can be switched off. And I'm obviously quite involved and interested in identity, and what we're trying to build is a zero-knowledge decentralized DNS network to build a proof of personhood protocol. And with identity, we're talking about self-sovereign identity, so it must be censorship resistant. You know, you want it to be decentralized. People must be in control of that. I've purposely trying to design a protocol with no financial tokens, so it can't be manipulated financially. People can't buy influence. To create as decentralized as possible protocol to give people, a voice through decentralized DNS, which is really powerful technology. And actually, in my opinion, it's technology that flew under the radar in the blockchain industry, but I think it's still another part of the industry that's evolving massively.
I'm going to say, I think zero knowledge is something that seems to be having it seems strange, but a bit of a renaissance at this point in time. There's a lot more papers coming out now, but like where there's actually advancements in ZK, although it's like ZK rollups, etc. But the zero knowledge, sort of the tech and the philosophies, the logic is starting to move in a good direction. You know, I think it stalled for a couple of years, really. Maybe it was because, for example, with Ethereum, the choice was zero knowledge rollups or optimistic rollups, and optimistic, although slow, was the easier route and the one that was easier to be adopted, by likes of Base and Optimism and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's exciting, but I don't know from a beginner's point of view, like probably what's the zero knowledge identification, and so if you can kind of explain the basic fundamental, first of all, what zero knowledge means compared to what they currently have in the legacy world, and then what's the thing about a decentralized system that makes it a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think about this quite a lot, and I think to myself, what's actually more important, the information or the fact that the information is true? And so I can tell you my name is Toby, but the truth is it might not be. Yeah, it could be Fred, right? And so the truth is actually the information in a way isn't really verifiable. But when we're using the zero knowledge proofs, and you can verify it, you don't actually need to know the information. The truth is more important than the information that it's verifying. And so for us, and what we're trying to do is create an identity protocol that harnesses decentralized DNS, which means you own your identity, so it's self-sovereign, but you can do things like selective disclosure, which means you can disclose information about yourself without actually having to reveal the information. So,
like, for example, I am this person, but you don't need to actually know my address.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, we're trying to build a proof of person and protocol. So I guess actually, if it came down to selective disclosure of more personal details, that's not really what we're worried about. We're kind of trying to build a base layer of just proving that you're a unique human. So if you can imagine, you can go onto a website, and at the moment, you can argue with people, you don't know who they are. So we don't know who Fred is, for example. And it could be anybody. And you know, at the end of the day, if we can remove the noise from the internet, I personally believe we can improve the way we interact with each other. We can improve the information that's circulating online. And that, I mean, there's so many things you can do with this kind of technology, but just that in itself will improve the discourse and the way we socialize and the way we're sharing information. But the technology is far more powerful than just that. That's just like one byproduct of what you can do.
Being able to control the data about you, it's effectively being able to control the monetizable part of you that made Facebook one of the most, and Google,
definitely
one of the most valuable assets on the planet.
It is indeed.
So fundamentally, if deployed in the correct way and used in the right areas, it actually in itself, it takes that whole thing of where you are the product, and it actually, you become the controller of the product.
That's the whole point of Web3, isn't it? Really, is to to read, write, and own. And I think for our project, we're trying to create a global standard. So there's so many different identity systems at the moment, hundreds, and there's hundreds of what they call did methods and did documents. So it's become quite a diluted industry in a way. And so, if we want to have a global system, you do need a standard, and you need a standard that can connect internationally, cross-border. And so that's what we're working on. We're trying to build a global standard, and that's why I'm a member of the Decentralized Identity Foundation, where they actually created the DID standard. And so, yeah, that's really what we're trying to work on is creating a global standard. So then you can actually use this type of identity anywhere in the world instead of just it being, you know, something that's local. You know, if you tie these things to financial instruments, you'll find that actually the regulations, the financial regulations globally get so complex. You're probably making that system much more complicated and harder to become ubiquitous, you know, because you're kind of building in barriers and extra problems. So, you know, that's why we're trying to remove any kind of token. And I guess also for me, Web3 and blockchain for me isn't just about, you know, making loads of money. It's for me, it's about people having more freedom, having more of a voice and getting power back to them. And I don't see that, you know, sometimes I think freedom and your voice is worth more than money in a way, because if we had £10 million, but we couldn't leave this room, we can't do anything with it. So our freedom actually can be worth more than the money in a way. And I see blockchain as a tool to get back that freedom, so to give us the voice. And so I actually see the financial side of blockchain is obviously very important, but I actually think the identity side is more important, and self-sovereign identity, when you can actually own that and no one can take it away from you, is giving people a tool to get control of their governments. And it can even be just a local thing or within a business, but that kind of tool can really help give people a voice. And when you're doing it in a way like we're talking about, in an anonymous way, it's a voice that you can have that people can't point fingers at you and say, oh, you were the one who said it. And so it enables people to have a voice without having to worry about the recourse. But we wish to create a system which is a system of honesty and a system of truth. And so we've been working on how to design a system which promotes good behavior. And you can do that with proof of personhood systems. Yeah, you can do that with certain mechanisms in place. So should someone abuse the system, with zero knowledge, you can do something called anonymity revocation. And so, you know, worst case scenario is you've created this wonderful system where people are behaving and they're not spamming each other or doing things that you don't want them to do on this network. But if they did it, then it would backfire on them, because this is an identity system. Even though it's an anonymous system, it's not a dark web. You know, we're not trying to create the new dark web. We're trying to create a new dark identity system, so it gives people privacy and freedom, but it also, you know, the whole point, if you want a system of trust, you can't have people abusing that system, because then you can't trust it. And so there has to be a mechanism in it which enables you to, should someone abuse that trust, sadly, you know, if they're breaking the law or if they're using it for spam, especially with the way decentralized DNS works, you've got something called access control management, which means each user controls the flow of information. So should someone be ringing them up and they don't want to listen to them anymore, you can block them for life. And, you know, with spam, it's, you know, you can eradicate spam with systems like these, because if someone's sending out a lot of spam and it's unsolicited, they actually are breaking the law. And so, you know, that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't walk into a bank and rob a bank and give them the passport before you rob the bank. And so that's kind of how the system works. You're entering into an identity system where your identity remains private and anonymous, as long as you don't abuse the system. And that is what's the kind of mechanism to promote good behavior. So I don't want people to be locked into a system like this. I think it needs to be voluntary, and you just use it if you've lost trust on the internet, or you're not too sure if people are calling you for scams or email scams. And it's just a system, a voluntary system to promote good behavior, so we can cut out the noise, the bots, the scams, and by rights it should help quite a lot of things, you know, really.
No, sounds very interesting. I mean, it's one of those subjects where I know that I've only scratched the surface, but you can't possibly learn everything.
I'll be honest, it confuses me sometimes, Dave. It really does. It gets pretty weird when you start talking about, you know, zero knowledge and Yeah, I mean, you know, people look at what we're doing and they think straight away, oh, it's a domain name registrar. So they think it's something that you could register a domain name. So you could possibly register Toby.ZKDid, but you would never know what the domain is. You would never register it per se. All of this stuff would be happening in the background seamlessly, and you're not meant to know what the domain is. No one is, and that's the whole point. It's supposed to be a completely anonymous system, but it is tied to your identity, and then so you can use it for voting mechanisms or whatever, really, you know, making a phone call and knowing that's a secure connection between you and your best friend, and knowing for sure it's him. Because obviously we're going into a world of deep fakes and AI, and you know, to be able to verify people's identity and know for sure, because you know, sometimes you don't need to know who they are, you just need to know that you can trust them. And you know, it's like yesterday I did a financial transaction with someone for the first time, and I was a bit concerned, you know, can I trust this guy? Am I going to get scammed? Well, with something like ZKDid, you could do it, and actually you wouldn't really need to know that person's identity, but you know deep down that, I guess it's kind of an insurance. It's a bit like using PayPal. When you send a payment with PayPal, if that person scams you, PayPal will give you your money back. And it's a, you know, it's not the same scenario, but the point is if someone tried to use a system like this to do scams or to commit crime, it wouldn't really make sense because it's an identity system. So that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't give your identity before you went and committed a crime, and hence that's why it promotes good behaviour.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to leave it at that.